Welcome to the show, Max. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
I do want to say, again, that Max, MVP here, go and look in our show notes. It'll link to his YouTube channel, which is awesome. And I ended up talking with Max originally on the Thinking Critical Comics Aficionado show. And when he did hear that Eric had stepped away and I needed some help, you were actually the first one who actually stepped up and said, yeah, I'll help you. Actually, while we were on the show, I ended up going over and so you had sent me a DM. So I really, really appreciate that. I really thank you for that. So everybody, please go and check out his YouTube show. And I'll just tell you right now, I won't make fun that you're a Warhammer 40K fan as well. It's funny when I ended up where you had talked about that on the Comics Aficionado show a little, and we were poking fun at you, and a bunch of people that end up listening to the podcast also listen and watch that show, love Warhammer, and gave me crap because I kind of made fun of it for a little. But there are some fans, and they are out there. But thank you for joining me. And said we're here to talk a number one book. I figured it'd be kind of cool to have you come on and talk a number one book. This week, there were a couple options. You ended up having Birds of Prey, number one, which we're going to talk about. But originally, you slated for the Fire and Ice book, which you were glad that I didn't give you, right? Or at least ask you to do.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I was so thankful. I think I got through like maybe the first 2 pages or something of that and just had to nope out of it, unfortunately.
It's rough. It was rough.
It was brutal. So I'm very thankful that we were able to get to review this one because I think that we were able to take like a much more objective look at the actual writing style, the artwork at this one. I think we've got some good things to say about it, or some interesting takes on this one.
Yeah,
sure.
The thing is, I think that me and you overall, we don't mind this issue. We were talking before we started recording. We're not against it per se, but it's one of those things that happens to me a lot, especially recently, when you end up reading an issue, you're like, okay, that was okay. Then you go and look at all the various places that you can see reviews. I go to the Comic Book Roundup, you go to League of Comic Geeks, but even both of those, it's like people are through the roof. There's a guy on the Comic Roundup who wants to give this an Eisner.
Yeah, even on Twitter, of course it's Twitter, but yeah, you'll see, like I was looking at some of these reviews and like you said, someone wants to give this an Eisner. They're giving this book 10 out of 10s, and I'm like, man, that is high praise for a book, and this does not deserve it.
Yeah, and just, pulling back the curtain a little, this morning I ended up reviewing the Coyote Gospel by Grant Morrison from his Animal Man run, and that's a 10 out of 10 for me. Not this. Nice. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like the idea that some of the greatest issues, and I know that some of these reviewers will play the game. Well, I don't mean it's perfect. You gave it a perfect score. So what's the deal? And it just is kind of eye-rolling, even though when I see that, I want to not like it. It's a weird play. You almost want to fight back against it, but it's not the issue's fault or Kelly Thompson's, but it's a serviceable issue. While I think it is better than Fire and Ice and you lucked out, the reason why, because it does still at least feel like it fits in the normal DCU, the normal continuity. It's not trying to be something else. And with that, though, kind of got a little, not fully bored, but a little disinterested by the end of what all is going on. I'll give the credits, and then I will ask you what you think of that, because it is Birds of Prey number one, written by Kelly Thompson, art by Leonardo Romero, colors by Jordi Belair, and letters by Clayton Coles. So we jump into this, and it is just let's get the team together, right?
Yeah, it seems like, and I think we were kind of, we both somewhat agreed with this fact that, it is an issue that's kind of introducing us to each one of these characters, and yet it doesn't allow us to really breathe or get acquainted with any of the characters. It feels like we're just kind of introducing one, going to the next, until we finally get to Harley, not to jump too, far into the issue. And it just, it wasn't paced well enough. And when I initially had heard about the issue and I looked at this team, I actually was pretty excited. I thought, man, you've got, people like Big Barda on this. This sounds really exciting. And there was something about it that said, man, the character development that can happen between the lot of them could actually be, with a better writer, something really intriguing, and we just did not get that here.
Yeah, and the funny play is, if you were paying attention while this was going down, Kelly Thompson, it was announced that she was coming to DC. Yet another Marvel writer kind of jumping ship over. And not all of them have worked out either, but she was giving this team, like, okay, each couple days, I'm going to announce a new member of the team. And you let people then, get excited about things. Oh, my God, Big Barda. Like you said, people were like, holy crap, I never thought Big Barda would be on there. Oh, my God, this. And then it was like the last one where they're like, and Harley. And it was like a record scratch. And everybody just turned and like, really? Like, why do we need more Harley? And unfortunately, what Kelly Thompson does by the end of this, Harley's already taking over the focus of the team, which is a shame because there's a lot of characters in this that I don't know that everybody knows Zealot from the Wildstorm stuff or the Wildcat stuff. And you get Cassandra, Big Barda, Black Canary, and then Harley. Everybody knows Harley. And it's not like this is a different Harley. I mean, she's just Harleying it up by the end, so you don't really need that. But we start off in Star City. You end up having Oliver and Dinah just sitting around. It seems like Dinah's already been like, hey, I'm going to get this team together. I need to because my sister Sin is in trouble. And that's a thing that I really was taken aback because Sin is a character from the Gail Simone Birds of Prey run before the New 52. This is her first time in this continuity, even though you can say that the continuity gets switched around since, say, the death metal and stuff. But still, why not tell us more about her? The whole play of this is set up to be, I have to save my sister Sin. But yet we don't really, you kind of push that aside and just go with the idea, oh, sister in trouble, let's go. And I even was talking to you. Do you know much about Sin?
I don't, actually. And thankfully, because of you, I've gotten to know her a little bit better, and you were kind of describing her. But see, something like that, I would have loved to see much more of the dynamic and the relationship between Sin and Dinah. But instead, we get pages of like a flashback to Harley beating up Cassandra Cain. And it's like, take those pages out and put in some like backstory of why we should care about Sin and Dinah.
And the weird play about it, you have in the current books, a lot of the different big two books, the way that you end up elevating a character is by having other characters say, oh my God, they're so great. We've had this with Miss Marvel. You get that a lot with Harley, right? So when you end up having Sin and you get no background for her, all you're going to get throughout this whole play is these kind of crazy characters. Like to connect Big Barda, Cassandra, Black Canary, Harley Quinn, and Zealot together, all you have to do is mention Sin. Black Canary says, it's my sister Sin. Oh, Sin, I know her. I'm in. But nobody reading it probably will know. There's a very minuscule amount that Sin ended up being a girl that was groomed to be the next Shiva and lead the League of Assassins. And you ended up having Dinah kind of go and save her, adopt her, these sort of things going on. But this is her first entry into this country. So who knows if that's even being played? Who knows? But it seems like it is. But nobody would know that. Isn't it the perfect way? You see a picture of them together, you're thinking this is just going to go to a flashback, the next deal to tell, but we don't. You end up just having Oliver asking, who are you going to have on the team? And it just doesn't play out as exciting, I think, as it should, because it just ends up being what she has, a checklist in her hand of who she doesn't pick. And the real play is Barbara allows this, but she doesn't want to know about it. It's a very odd play. Oliver sits here and says, hey, can I be involved? And she's like, yeah, I'll get you involved later. You settle down. But even going forward then, because then they decide, ooh, Cassandra has to be in. But before that, this actually kind of spoils the Green Arrow miniseries by Joshua Williamson that's going on right now. It actually ends up when Cassandra shows up, she's in Spirit World, she's in trouble there. There's a lot of weird plays. And the only thing that it mentions, the weirdest thing to get you caught up, is I hate to separate after ... everything. Everything includes Oliver getting killed by Doomsday, being sent to it. Like, they really push this in here, and you're just going to have to go for it. And I think that there is a lot of setup missing. What do you think?
Yeah, it's weird because, that first page, like your first page of this issue wasn't anything extraordinary. It's just Ollie and Dinah kind of like sitting / laying on the bed. And you're just kind of like, oh, it's already very dour. And the first line of the entire book from Ollie, he says, I'm sorry I'm so useless to you in this. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, that's a great way to start off our superhero.
Poor Oliver, right?
I know. He gets trashed. And I understand his sentiment because he does want to help Dinah. But I mean, where they're going, as we find out later in this book,
I wish that was played out better, because he really is saying, based on where they're going, they're going to Themyscira. He can't go, but the way that Kelly Thompson frames it is he's just useless.
Oh, yeah, and we kind of see that throughout the book. Like, we also see Zealot, with Grifter, and Grifter is in bed as well. So like the two main, male characters in this book are lazy, kind of pathetic in their beds, just laying around, not doing anything. It's like, okay, these guys are superheroes. It was kind of odd that, well, maybe for Kelly Thompson, it's not that odd, but it just felt like, you know what? Come on, for me, it feels like whenever a writer has to degrade another character in order to lift their characters up, it feels very lazy and condescending.
I agree. That's one of the things that I have a real problem with. And even, like I said, it's not quite that, but when they mention Sin to anybody, a character that not many people would know, and the idea, too, where Kelly Thompson does these things in this book that's weird, because the idea where Sin is so important to her, but you might want to think about the whole play that, well, if she was so important, why haven't any of us heard of her in years of continuity? Right. And how did you let her get taken? And in the Gail Simone deal, it was kind of more of a mother-daughter relationship with this, because she's so much younger. But I think that you go sister here only because of your mother. Then you're a real piece of crap. But this girl, she ends up revealing is 16, but she's lost track of her so much that, oh my God, she got kidnapped and now I have to do something. But it's weird. And you'll have a weird play with Kelly Thompson elevating things once Harley comes that goes against how she elevates things in the beginning. And it just gets all wacky. But again, this is just the, hey, Ocean's 11, let's get the gang together. The problem is that while that's a big part of things, that's not the be-all, end-all. So by the end of this issue, you are only getting that, let's gather the team. And like you said, you don't even have enough room to even really get that much interesting things about them, because really all they're all doing, besides maybe Zealot, is just kicking ass. And it's fine, but you're not getting any character work, really, right?
And I wouldn't even really say, besides Cassandra, we really don't see much action in the book, which is like you said, understandable. We're just trying to get the team together. But I mean, I think probably at the staple mark in this book, like probably the halfway point, the rest of it is just, how do we get Harley involved? Why we should get Harley involved? Harley actually getting there, and then being her quirky, goofy, dumb self. And we really don't get, like, I feel like so much of that was unfortunate, because a lot of those pages could have been taken out, or honestly, Harley herself could have been taken out of this. And we could have spent much more time with the characters that, people may not know as well, or having the dynamic between the characters, because it is a unique lineup, right? But once, like you said, once Harley's introduced, everything just kind of focuses on her, and we don't really actually get to spend more time with our other characters.
Yeah, it's weird, because at the beginning, Cassandra ends up, she's fighting, League of Shadows, League of Assassins type deal. Mm-hmm. And you have Black Canary Dinah realizes, okay, the best way I can get Cassandra is go help her, even though she might not need help. She's great. She can beat up anybody. She's a living weapon. Well, most people would know this. The idea that when I went into this, I was wondering, is this going to be the talky Cassandra that we had recently in Clune Red's Batgirls? Or will this go back to the classic that doesn't talk a lot or at all? And it's weird, because you get this play where she's talking enough. I mean, there's not like weird things. It's not, when you get to Barda kind of talks in that crazy, like over the top, almost like an Amazon type talk, but that's fine. But when you get to this with Cassandra, she's like, yeah, I called this in. Hey, I need your help, Sin. Oh, Sin, your sister, yeah, she's in trouble. And she says, of course, what's more important than a sister? This seems like a very, person who's able to speak and say their mind, but you're going to throw a joke in later, again, tying it in with Harley. But in that, you just kind of get Cassandra and says, yeah, I'm in. Sin's in trouble, I'm in. And then they separate in a weird way where Dinah says, I'm going to go get the third person on my list, but it's tricky. It's real tricky to get this person. But I want you to go get Big Barda. To me, that's tricky as well. But she sends Cass to go get Big Barda. The thing about Zealot, who was the one it wasn't that tricky. She ends up owing her a favor, walks in and says, hey, Grifter, what up? Hey, you want to come and join me? And joins. It's just that way to separate them. But even then, you just have Cassandra go to Big Barda, and you have what seems like on paper, oh, Big Barda's fighting vampires. in a bar that looks like her own bar there in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
But you don't really get that much excitement from it. It's just, you know, that they're just going to beat the crap out of them. And even that, League of Assassins deal, it wasn't like there was any sort of thrill to it. It was just an obstacle for them to then talk. And it's kind of that with Barda as well, right?
It felt very much like as they were writing the script, Kelly probably said, okay, we need an action scene here and an action scene here just to kind of have those beats within the script. Or maybe editorial said, hey, listen, we need to put in some sort of action here. So they kind of infused it because, yeah, both times I was like, why is this necessary? Why are they fighting these people? Vampires, League of Assassins, like they're on rooftops, they're in bars. Like there's, okay, I had more questions when they were, in these action scenes than I did answers. So it was more so just like, okay, I feel like this is just a plot point that they're trying to hit. But all of it seemed to be like, contrivances, because then it's like, oh, well, see you later, vampires. We never mention you again. It's like, all right, sure, I
just
guess.
Crazy. And even like, are these vampires? Yeah, the vampires were fighting them. There's no personality to the fights. It's just random mooks that they're, fighting. They just happen to be vampires, assassins. You didn't realize that off panel, you get this Mr. Miracle. He's in bed right now, laying down in the next room. He's like, everybody has to have their guy laying in bed. I think Mr. Miracle's over there. He's just, lounging out. He's like, I'm in here. But yeah, and again, though, it comes down to where you're going to play, because I do think what you're doing here is, oh my God, this team, when we heard about how are they going to be together? Oh my God, how can you bring a Barda with a Zealot, with a Harley, with a Cassandra? It all comes down to, hey, Sin's in danger. And at that point, Barda's like, I have my own things to deal with. I can't help you. I'm sorry. Because everybody seems to be like, I don't know about this until Sin's mentioned. And, it's because Dinah, her sister, Sin, she's in danger. I'm in. The only thing you don't get is you son of a bitch, I'm in, which would be great. But I mean, that seems to just be the be all end all. But yet we as a reader, a lot of people won't even get the real connection. It just, a sister. A sister's in trouble, and it kind of gets very tropey. It doesn't feel like earned, especially because it isn't. It just shows up. And that's really the way that instead of character work to get them involved together, you're just going to have that MacGuffin of they all want to save this girl. That's it. Yeah. And it's very odd, right?
Yeah, one of the things I think I would have liked to see, like if we could have changed maybe some of those scenes where, they're just fighting random, villain of the day or whatever, when they're talking about, oh yeah, well, this is for Sin. If we had an introduction where we are introduced to Sin for like people who may not know her, then we get the stakes and we go, oh, this person obviously means something to Dinah. Then as she goes along throughout the issue, we understand how important this is to her. So then when we get to those action scenes, it's not just maybe, useless fighting, but maybe like we could see something that Cassandra does that makes her a prime candidate later in the series to why Dinah would want to recruit her. And then same thing with Barda. Why is Barda useful? If she's in an action scene, maybe she takes out, or maybe, her strength does something to where it'll be utilized later in the series that we could see. But for the most part, it just seemed I don't want to say useless, but really when I was reading it, I just kept thinking that this is, I don't see the point in this.
Yeah, exactly. Now, again, if you go with something, we'll just take Cassandra, for instance. They'll probably bring it up later, but why not right away? Sin, if they go by, again, this is the first appearance in this continuity, but the way they're playing it, I think they're going to go pretty much with it. Sin was being brought up as a weapon, just like Cassandra, to replace Cassandra's mom, Lady Shiva. I mean, there is a huge thing for Cassandra to say, I don't want anybody to have to go through that, or I felt bad for that before. Now they're doing this again to her. So but you don't use that yet. And the first issue, that's the first impression. Get it going. Kind of like you said, show some things. And even if you showed that she's a little girl everybody's trying to, use and abuse and do, you'd feel sympathy and feel it. But in this, it's just a name that's being thrown out there. Plus the name is Sin, which is not something that you can be like, oh my God, Harley seems to like it. But even that Harley makes a joke, but then everybody knows this girl, except maybe Zealot, because then we go to Zealot. She just owes Dinah a favor. But this is, again, this weird play of just, hey, I need a favor. Okay, I'm out. There's not much character work here, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of just everyone was, for the most part, there was no real struggle to go. It was one line of dialogue to say, no, I'm too busy, or no, I can't, or I'm kind of doing something else. But then the second, like you said, they mentioned sin, they go along with it. And for them, it makes sense in the story, but for us as the reader, we don't understand why. And I think that's the miscommunication or the non-communication of not having that between writer and reader. That was what was lacking there.
I agree. And by the end, once you find, like, you kind of lose track that they haven't really told anybody what they're being recruited for. And if this was something where they were an organization where you have to follow rules or whatever, that would be fine. We're going to send you wherever we want to. But they're just hearing sin, we're in, to only later find out this is an end of the world situation that they probably will die doing. But they don't seem to mind up until that point. And even then, they're like, oh, my God, because then it just, and again, it's very much like you said, where it seems like Kelly Thompson's doing the script. We're going to do this, this, this. And then afterwards, well, let's insert a fight there. And let's do that, because even when they get Zealot, they go off and they have a team that really was set up where Oliver and her were talking. They want a team that, legitimately quoting, I want people to shit their pants in the street when they see this. I think you got it. I think you got a good team here. I don't know why, because you told me even beforehand, like the idea of, we need to add Harley because we need a wild card. Why do you need a wild card? There's no reason to have a wild card.
If anything, it puts the team in more jeopardy to have Harley there, because if this is a life and death situation where it could, potentially mean the end of the world, I'm pretty sure you don't want a wild card that could potentially do anything to put you or Sin in jeopardy. And so I'm just thinking everyone would have been better off. The reader, the writer, the team itself would have been better to not have Harley.
Now, Kelly Thompson is going to play the game where and that's the problem. You're setting up us to say, why would you get, so she's going to know this. And then I think she's going to end up trying to make up for that. And all we're going to get is Harley. We're going to get the Harley show like we do a lot of times with the Suicide Squad and all these other teen books that she gets thrown into. There's just, and I'll admit, I am actually one of the few Harley fans, but Harley needs to go away for years. Harley has to go to a point where people want her back, not just sit there and say another book with Harley in it. And it's been that way for a while. You need to kind of push her aside.
Yeah, and I think that she's, probably better in smaller doses, or like as a, because you look at Batman Joker Deadly Duo by Mark Silvestri that came out not too long ago. Harley was in that book, and I didn't mind her at all. I think she was written really well. And we had her in smaller doses to where when she did eventually show up, she had some great character development, great character work with her teaming up with Joker. So I think that I don't think that the character is bad, but what has been done to the character over the past few years has been, it's almost been like an oversaturation of her.
Yeah, it has. And when she's on a team and you're pulling out the wild card deal, what you get then is her thing in the book will just be to keep quipping, to keep getting in the way, to keep doing things wrong, and that dominates the script then. Yeah. What is Zealot going to do while that's going on? Because Zealot is Zealot, going to do the deal, do the job. So it really ends up where the focus really gets thrown, like you said, at the midpoint deal, pretty much where Cassandra says we should get Harley. That's the wild card. We need her as the wild card. And they say, no, absolutely not. And then Cassandra, even the idea where they're talking, she's like, I have an idea, Harley Quinn. Can I tell a story? And then she goes through a couple pages of this flashback story that's just basically fighting. It's the idea that where Cassandra, and again, when we say elevated, you have Harley kicking the crap out of Cassandra, which is off. But the play is, she doesn't follow the rules of the fighting, and she's crazy, and she jumped out a window at the end. And then we come back, and the joke is, you really didn't tell that story very well, and we take a page to actually have that joke. We don't need that joke. We just saw the story and it was fine. We know what happened. We're going with this. And that is not your strong point, telling stories. Oh, my goodness, you'll be fine. But that's just to go and get Harley. And now again, we're going to go and she's fighting Joker gang randomly here. Like why?
Yeah, I think ultimately the book suffers from poor pacing and poor writing. I think we had kind of discussed and it all kind of comes back to the aspect of like the writing is very bland, it's stale, and honestly just boring. And that's why I think we initially we had said that there's nothing like super offensive. I don't think that this, there's a lot of character assassination, but I think the writing is just like, it was what I would expect from like a 14-year-old who's like just turned in her first comic.
That
for
is
like
shade.
I
love it.
I don't mean to, no disrespect, but this is just how I read the book. Like kind of a 14-year-old teen it is who's just kind of turned in her first comic for art class, and it maybe got like a B or a B minus. Like there's nothing of real substance here that makes me go, this is a fantastic first issue that is groundbreaking or interesting. You can't really take anything away from it.
No, it's a serviceable way of getting a team together.
Sure.
And hopefully it will improve from here. But it's weird because this is where you have to get some of this character work and some of the stuff nailed down between the characters. You don't even have a point here where usually in these teams, and I think like you said about a 14-year-old, which makes me giggle. But I also get the idea from that because there's not really any friction in the team. Like you don't have zealots say, the hell with you, I'm not going to be on a team with Harley. And then Canary, remember, you owe me this. All right. Well, like usually we'll have some friction. This is just, again, I hate to say, but it's like sister power. Your sister's in trouble. We're in no matter what. Here we are. Let's go. And I think you do need a little bit of a friction. You need a little bit. And it seemed like Harley would be that. But once Harley gets in there, it's just joke city. At one point, she's even doing cartwheels saying, hey, everybody, look at me. That seems like a joke just that we would say, like, oh, man, I'm surprised she doesn't have her do cut. She has her do that. And then through all this, it is just the Harley show. Harley, to then get to, okay, what is the big thing that we have to do? Finally, somebody's like, maybe we have to find out what this job is.
Yeah.
And you end up finding out that, it's an end of the world thing. But even to do that, you throw in Maps, the character from Gotham Academy that a lot of people did like, cute little girl likes Dungeons and Dragons. Suddenly it's the future Maps as Meridian who comes out and I'm like, you're throwing too much in here by the end. And then just say, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to Themyscira. It's end of the world stuff. The Amazons might end up doing something with Sin that will destroy the world. You're like, all right, you really at the end, it almost felt like, oh crap, I got 2 more pages left. Boom. And you get this big deal where I kind of was like, my head's more like spinning at the point, and also, like you said, it's just like, I don't know if I like this team yet because I like the characters, but you're not really doing anything with them is what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
But what did you think by the end?
Yeah, I think overall, it didn't, like I said, it didn't really leave me with anything substantial. I always like to ask the question, did this book need to be made? Like whenever I'm reading a comic, I always like to ask myself, what did I gain from this that I otherwise wouldn't have if I didn't read it, right? And there was absolutely zero that I gained from this book. It was just a net zero across the board.
0.0.
There you go.
Hey, there you
That's
go.
what it was.
Yeah, 100%. And now, in terms of like, that's the story and the writing. In terms of the artwork, I honestly didn't mind it. I think that the art and colors are trying to portray a very retro kind of classic, maybe 60s, 70s era artistic style, which I didn't mind. So yeah, it really just came down solely to the storytelling and the writing for me.
Yeah, and when you go, you said you look at a book, did it need to exist? What I end up doing a lot of times, and it takes, even if it's a miniseries, the idea of when I start to when I end, do I think the character, do I think more about like, oh man, that was awesome. You showed me how cool this character was, or man, I want to read more. I actually, when you saw the lineup, besides maybe rolling my eyes at Harley, I was interested in this lineup. This seems really cool. And why at the end of one issue am I less interested? I'm not saying that I'm writing it completely off, but I'm saying at the end, that last page, I'm less interested in this lineup than I was going in because you see that there is no real overall earning of why they're together and what they're about and how this goes. You just kind of get the characters, and the real oomph was just if I said Batgirl, Cassandra, Big Barda, Black, if I mentioned that, oh man, that seems cool. What's going on? By the end, well, what's going on is they all agreed to just help Black Canary Saber's sister. That's it. And I thought that was a less deal. What would you give it out of 10?
Ooh, I think I'd probably give this maybe a 4 or a 4.5 out of 10. It's not, it's not like a 1 or a 2 because, like I said, it's not super offensive. But probably within the 4 or 5 range, just because it's so average and just mid. That, like I said, I didn't really take anything away from this, but I also don't want to rip it up, or like toss it away. It's just it exists. I know a lot of people have liked it, so that's kind of where I would put it on the scale.
So you're not giving it a perfect score, 10 out of 10. Yeah. I was worried that you might be doing that. I could kind of tell while we were talking that you loved it so much that it's an Eisner. I'm a 5.5. I could even be convinced. I could be convinced up to a 6 if we get a second issue that ends up giving me more of, that whole play. Okay, this was there because of that. Even by the end, like you said, when you go and reread it and you realize that Oliver, he meant that he can't help because they're going to Themyscira. Mm-hmm. That's something. But the way Kelly Thompson plays it she's not setting up things properly. The pacing's off and not much character work. You're just having them thrown at you. And then Harley's show. So, yeah, I'm a 5.5. You're a little less than me, but still, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't read it, but it's one of those that if you go into it, let us know. Let us know if you like it or not. But I can't see why people are saying it's perfect. It's crazy. But thank you for joining me, Max. Really, it really does mean a lot to me. And just, again, to remind people to go to the link and find MVPs. And it's Max von Priestley, one of the best names. Wes always says it. It is one of the best names ever. I don't even think just in comics or geekdom, I think of all time. Does sound like a villain, though. But yeah, Max is a great guy. And please click on the link in the show notes and go and subscribe and check out his YouTube channel. Anything else you want to say before we leave, Max?
No, I just want to say thank you again for having me, brother. This was a lot of fun. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity that we always get to have on Wes's channel, on Thinking Critical, whenever we get to talk on Saturday mornings on the Aficionados. But this has developed some really cool relationships, especially, here on YouTube with all of us that I think ultimately our biggest thing or, our biggest hobby and our passion is storytelling and comic books. It's a fantastic medium. And I think that's why we love doing these reviews so much. And so that's why I appreciate you having me on today. It was great to review this, even if it is for me, like a 4 or 5 out of 10.
Yeah, it's still, though, it's the one thing, like you said, we love comics. You want them to be better. I mean, when they're not as good, but some people, they're satisfied with what they get. That's fine, too.